Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. I'm Catherine Tindall, a CPA with Dominion Enterprise Services. We're a specialty tax and accounting firm that works for advisors for their tax strategy for their firms. In today's episode, I have Natalie Hales joining me. She boasts more than a decade of financial marketing experience on both sides of the border. She's up in Canada. I'm a US-based tax professional. But she specializes in helping advisors discover their niche, craft their positioning, and tell their stories to attract dream clients. And she has deep, unique expertise in this for advisory firms. So today's episode, we're going to be talking a lot about niching, but thanks for joining me today, Natalie.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Really appreciate it.
So as a CPA firm with a niche, working with advisors, I very much appreciate the importance of having a niche, but I think for a lot of advisors that I talk to, it's not something that I encounter super commonly. So I'd love if we can just, what are some things that you've been observing, kind of general trends or things when it comes to advisors trying to discover their niche or considering niching to begin with?
Yeah. And I mean, in Canada, it's probably even less so, which is funny because, I mean, some of the most successful advisors that you see, they have a niche. And the stats are supporting that. And, it's funny, I was just creating a post about kind of my experience at MDRT and just walking around there and seeing some of the most, successful financial advisors around the world, and they have a niche. And so a lot of that, a lot of the presentations even that they were putting on were talking about their niche or how they've done things. And so I think it's becoming more popular, thank goodness. But I do think that it's so important for advisors to have a niche, to be able to speak to their audience directly and connect with them on a one-on-one level so that they can actually reach, have empathy for what they're going through and reach the right people, and convince them that they need a financial advisor. And I think that that's in benefit to everybody.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where, at least what I've seen from people doing this, like so many firms, like the majority of their new business comes in from referrals from existing clients. And like I've seen a lot of firms where their focus is just local service and then they just kind of service a local area. But what I've seen from some of the firms that do the niching, just in my experience, is that it really expands your reach and your target market, right? Because now you're not limited to a geographical location. Now your messaging isn't, generic. Like people can actually, like they're talking to me, instead of just, you need to do these advisory things. On the marketing side, like, have you seen pretty significant improvements firms have had from deploying this, like in making a shift from maybe a geographical approach to a more, niche focused in terms of their marketing?
I think that's one of the things that's made niche marketing even more popular in the last few years, is kind of everybody going through COVID, everybody getting a little bit more digital, and advisors just realizing that they aren't bound by geographic location. And so opening up that world, that has allowed advisors to feel even more comfortable, because I think the number one fear that advisors have is that, that there's not going to be enough. That is not a big enough pool. And so they decide not to niche, when in fact, even if they were, surprisingly, even if they were stuck to a geographic location, there are plenty of a particular type of person, as long as you have a niche and we'll go through my step process in order to define a great niche. But if you have a great niche, you're certainly able to find them. And so, but even in the last few years, just with everything getting so much more virtual, I think advisors have really realized that the group of people that they can potentially find, even if they don't have a great niche, like a well-defined niche, is massive. And so they're not so worried about it anymore. And they are realizing that they can kind of become this specialist in a particular area. And it's not only, obviously improves the bottom line, but it's easier for them, right? It's easier for their creating processes. It's easier to speak to the same type of people over and over again and target their pain points. And so they start to get some repetition and in their business, and that just allows for processes, which makes things a lot easier as well. And so the advisors who are really seeking obviously not only a great practice where they have a significant book of business, but then advisors who are looking for more stability, more processes, and things like that, they're also starting to see the benefits of niching down. And so I'm excited for where it's going.
Yeah, that's great. So you've got a firm that's interested in this. Let's talk about your three-step process of where do you start?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, when I work with advisors, I do take them through, like, my whole process is helping them first niche down and understand exactly who they're talking to and developing a really great ideal client profile. And then helping them kind of create the branding and the messaging around that and those targeted messages that we think will resonate with that audience before then creating a marketing plan. And so that is like the niche funnel itself. But when we are in those first few weeks, kind of in the consulting phase and kind of doing, identifying who they're, who is the best people that they can work with, I do walk them through a bit of a process to first do a deep dive into them, right? I do need to know a lot about them, a lot about their business, because I want to help them combine, what they love with what they're good at and then how they make money, right? So that's where I do like a deep discovery, but I'm also listening for the story, right? I'm listening to what have you been through in your life? How can you relate to people? What's the story there that we can potentially create? But I do then take advisors through a bit more of a logical process to make sure it is in fact a really great niche. And for me, that's starting off with defining your mega market, which is a large group of people that see themselves as a group. And I feel like that's really key, right? Because if they see themselves as a group, they're going to have conferences, they're going to have magazines. You're going to be able to find them. And that's really important for your marketing. And so that's step number one, is defining your mega market, which is that larger group. And then step number two is defining that market segment. So finding a segment within that mega market that you can relate to personally, right? Because if you don't have some sort of personal connection, it's really hard to one, have empathy for what your niche is going through, but to be able to tell a really effective story.
Mhm.
And so that's important. People want to know that you understand them before you can potentially solve their problems. And
Yeah.
then
Yep.
number three is then looking at that market segment that you have and then defining a market niche. So deciding how is it that we feel like we can dominate a very small area of this? Is it by how you do what you do, or is it some sort of psychographic or some other kind of demographic that we can slice that off even further? But essentially, we want to help you dominate a particular area. And so we'll look at, does it have a pool of 1,000 to 10,000 prospects with only 20 to 200 advisors serving that area? And so for me and my clients, that's what usually makes a really great niche. But then when we can tie that back to who they are as a person, and making sure that they're going to love what they're doing day in, day out, and be able to tell a really great story about, this is my purpose and this is my why, that makes the marketing all that much more impactful.
Yeah, that's great. And, I think it shows that deep alignment between the work that you're doing and that communication
Mm,
because, I think so often like I'll see this from some advisors, I'll see like just very generic marketing that goes out and um when you don't have that deep connection with like these particular individuals are who I serve and who I'm, pouring my life into to help them, once you have that kind of connection, once the way that the marketing goes out, when you have that, like it just
yeah,
makes it so much more effective. But I think just as a business owner and as a, as a technical advisor, like it just improves your quality of life so much more too. It's like,
it
who you're
does.
saying yes to, who you're saying no to.
Mhm.
Do you have like a maybe to give a little more, meat on the bone, like, do you have an example of like this process with a particular niche that maybe you went through with a client recently or like
Yeah.
a more in the weeds example for people to understand the kind of granularity you're talking about? Hey there, Catherine here. Thanks for listening to the conversation. Just wanted to explain a little more about what we do. So, I'm a CPA here with Dominion. We're a tax firm that works specifically for financial advisors as they're growing and scaling their practices to help them avoid tax waste, make the right calls, and grow practices that they love. So, if you're interested in saving more, you can DM me on LinkedIn with the word guide, and I'll send you over our guide for financial advisors to scale tax efficiently, all my top tips to unlock six-figure savings. Thanks and keep enjoying the show.
Yeah. I mean, I just finished working with an advisor. He hasn't launched his brand yet. But he was thinking he might be able to work with IT professionals. He's been in IT in the past, and so was considering that as a potential niche. And he was also considering, just seniors in general and talking about retirement because he really loves delivering education and he goes out to a lot of senior retirement homes and kind of loves doing presentations and things. So those are the two niches that he was considering until he started working with me. And then we started to talk about his story, right? And his story was massive. I mean, he had uh, career changes, massive kind of weight loss. He had a ton of, family illnesses and deaths. And he also had his own cancer diagnosis as well. And so it was a lot to kind of look at and say, you know, what is it about either seniors or IT that you feel like maybe you could have a personal connection to? And so
Mm-hmm.
we were able to find that mega market, and we could, I'm sure, find an area that within one of those that he could potentially dominate. But what was it that he felt like he could resonate with them on a personal level? And so he was having some challenges with that because he didn't actually enjoy the IT profession. And obviously he wasn't a senior himself. And so, um, you know, we started talking about pivoting entirely. And this one in particular was sensitive because I said, like, we started talking about he's currently having cancer actually, and so he's been going through treatments for the last few years, and so we had dug into that and what that was like for him. And he's doing a bunch of things on the side to help the cancer community, and so we started talking about some of his passions. And I said, like, what what if you had a niche that was more, he calls them cancer warriors. He's, all those patients, the care teams, and the survivors. What if you started helping people like yourself, or who have this family history of cancer? And so, we only came to that realization because he had told me about a client that he had, where she also had a family history of cancer, and they kind of, they got along well while, her mother was getting treatments and while he was getting treatments. And she worked with him to get her policies in place. And then a few years later, he got a call from her that she also now had cancer. And so it's what kind of spurred on him becoming more involved in the community. And we started to say, what if this is your niche, right? What if it's cancer warriors and their care teams? And I mean, it just took off from there. He's so passionate about it. And so the marketing practically wrote itself. The story practically wrote itself. What he does day in, day out now, his content, he's just so passionate about kind of talking about this and helping his niche now. And so that's one example, I guess, of what you can do when you do have that, when you get to have a niche that you feel like you resonate with on a personal level. I think that's what really changes the game.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's such a specific thing that you wouldn't think of that being a niche, but it makes total
No.
sense with his story. And then, like, at least maybe on like a less human element, more tactical element of, oh, they're easy to find. Like, they're in
Mhm.
associations, they're going to things, they're reading certain books, they're watching, when you're
Yeah.
going through that kind of you're Googling certain things. Like,
Mhm.
it's like they're easy to find, like they collect up in a group and they have a very specific need set that's going to be probably fairly, I imagine, fairly similar across people going through that experience because
Yeah.
it's just so life altering in very specific ways, and the kind of planning that you have to do when you're in that situation, you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. And you would just never, I would never think of that as like a niche, but it is.
Yeah.
That's really cool, the way that you were able to work with him and tie that human element back in, because I'm sure now his work and the passion and his ability to deliver value to that niche on the, more production, delivery of services side, I'm sure is so much stronger as well, beyond just, being
I
able
mean,
to have that passion.
people are just literally opening their doors for him now. I mean, before it was like him going out and having to, really strive to have these conversations. And then, he is talking about something that is he's very passionate about, that he's currently experiencing and that he has some really deep understanding of. And so especially around, getting second opinions or the right questions to ask. He's very passionate about those things. And so he talks about those a lot. So it's not just about, talking about your services all the time. It's having these kind of solid points of view and strong points of view for your niche that you can deliver. And those are
Mm.
the conversations that he's having now with, you know, people in senior homes who are also experiencing long-term illnesses, but then also care teams that, doctors and nurses that are saying, come to our hospital, have a conversation with our people. Would love to let people know that you are somebody who is coming at this from the inside and your
Yeah.
perspective, and they trust that he can really actually help them, not just on the financial side, but on the emotional aspect side, that, and advisors know that they deal with that just as much. And
Oh
so,
yeah.
so being able to have, your prospects understand, okay, this person has gone through it themselves. They understand it at a deeper level. I trust them. And then have that conversation about how you can help them on the financial side, right? Or
Yeah,
with
that's great.
policies and things.
Yeah, because that, they sense that good intent,
Yeah.
and that's, it's genuine. That's great. Well, so for advisors who are interested in going through this process themselves, I know that you have a course that's available on
Yeah.
your website. Is
Yeah.
that a good resource for people to check out who are interested in,
Yes.
dialing this in for themselves?
Yeah, for the people who maybe don't have the ability to work one-on-one with me in my program, and are just looking to get a better understanding of their niche, I do have the digital course, The Power of Niche, up on my website, nataliehales.com. And that will help walk you through those 3 steps, give you workbooks, give you kind of validation checklists that you can make sure that this is, this is a really great niche, that it's going to hit, not only kind of doing that deep dive into you as a person, but then also hitting off kind of what makes a mega market, what makes a market segment, what makes a great market niche, and just going through those 3 things in depth to make sure that your niche actually checks all of those. And so, yeah, that will give you the videos and the workbooks that you need to walk through that. But anybody who's interested in a little bit more to do the niching, plus the brand messaging and like the marketing strategy and 90-day action plans, they still have to work with me directly. I haven't gotten to put out a digital course for all of that just yet.
Well, we'll have you back on the show again when that stuff, is available with all
Awesome.
the positioning, everything. But for those that are interested in connecting with Natalie, also we'll post the link near in the show notes of how to get access to the course, and then also to connect with you on LinkedIn. I know that's how we originally got connected, and that's a great place to kind of see your updates and keep up with what's going on. But as somebody I cannot speak to the profound benefits of really niching and really, having that like interpersonal connection with the clients that you work with. It just makes such a profound difference in the way you run your practice, the way you create your marketing content, and then just your ability to create value, whether or not somebody's a client, because you can produce marketing material that really helps people rather than just being, trying to get somebody to come in the door, and people sense that intent. So thanks so
Yes.
much for joining me on today's episode. And for those listening, there'll be links to the show notes around for how to get in touch with Natalie, how to get in touch with us. But thanks for, again, joining us on the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast.
Thank you.